Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Scottish on the home side, half Welsh on the away side. Both of the breweries involved here have featured on the channel before. The Scottish brewery a good number of times before because they are a brewery that are fairly local to me here in central Scotland, whereas the Welsh brewery has only featured once, and that was a good few years ago back in 2016, and I've heard nothing from them again until now. So yeah, curious to see what happens when they put their heads together. Hopefully this is another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on. For this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Kippen to the northwest of Stirling, the town that I was born in, and we're having a look at another beer from Fallen Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Super Elevation. It comes in at 8% ABV. It's a hazy New England Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and it's brewed in collaboration with Wild Horse Brewing, who are from Llandudno in the north of Wales, right in the middle of the north coast actually. But yeah, the last beer that I had from them was an American wheat beer, and like I said, that was back in 2016, but we've had a good number of Fallen Brewing Company beers over the last little while. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. An 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So let's do it. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Fallen Brewing and from Wild Horse Brewing, and hopefully we can add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is that you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another one for the Welsh beers. This one will appear in both of those because it is dual nationality, and both lists are being added to at different rates. Of course, the Scottish one more readily than the Welsh. Hopefully we can get some more Welsh beers, of course, as well though. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Fallen Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. We'll kick off with Fallen because they are the home brewery in this case. So Fallen Brewing was established by Paul Fallen and his wife Karen, and Paul is a former home brewer that turned professional. Quite a common story in craft beer circles, of course. But they bought the brewery site back in 2012, and this is in the engine shed of the old Kippen railway station near Stirling, which is in the vicinity of the Fintry Hills and Gargunnock. Quite a scenic site in Scotland, I guess you could say. But the station closed in 1934, but it was actually one of the busiest on the Forth and Clyde Railway because of two local creameries, a sandstone quarry and a tile and brick factory. And there was a lot of tourism in that area as well, from what I understand. That, of course, is not the case anymore. But initially, to reduce their startup costs and also to determine what kind of brew kit they were going to buy, Paul initially started brewing his beers under contract at Traditional Scottish Ales, which is now the Black Wolf Brewery in Throsk near Stirling. But the first beers were produced at their own brewery in April of 2014, and over the course of 2016 they built a new building at the brewery to increase their capacity, and they installed a canning line in there in early 2017, and they've just gradually scaled up the brewing over the last few years, adding more fermentation tanks and so on. But apparently all of the beers that they produce are vegetarian and vegan friendly, and the brewery now runs off 100% green energy as well. As of October 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 20 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, although I think that number might be a little bit low. But in fairness, I would say that this brewery are not the most prolific, but they do release, they take quite a bit of time to refine their recipes and make sure they're right before they send them out for to the commercial market and things like that. So yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of what Fallen Brewing Company do. But yeah, probably the beers you should try from these guys would be the Platform C, which is a lovely old school West Coast IPA, and the Choo Choo, which is a salted caramel stout, if I'm remembering the exact name correctly. But yeah, those are probably the two best beers, or my two favourites at least, that you should try from from Fallen Brewing Company. Those are both very, very nice and kind of cult classics in Scotland, I guess you could say. That stout has won a good number of awards actually, and one of the best kind of lower ABV stouts I think that you can get in Scotland for sure. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Fallen Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on to the Welsh side of things then, on to the second part of the brewery notes. So Wild Horse Brewery. Wild Horse Brewery was founded back in March of 2015 by David and Emma Farragher in Llandudno in North Wales, and I do apologise if I make any bad pronunciations with the Welsh names. Nothing, I'm just not really familiar with it at all. But his brother apparently bought him a home brewing kit for his 30th birthday, and he just started experimenting with it. But he'd been living in Canada, and so he had good exposure to the American and Canadian craft beers. And he previously worked in the IT sector, but he decided that he wanted to become a professional brewer, having started up home brewing, and he did this upon his return to Wales in 2014. But Emma is involved at the brewery as well, as we've mentioned, and she takes care of the finance side of things, and she also works full-time elsewhere apparently as well, but David is in charge of the overall brewery operations. But they were originally brewing on a small 164 litre system, but they quickly upgraded within a year or two to a 10 barrel system, and over the years they've continued to expand. They now have 3 brewers and 2 brewery assistants, and they're brewing 16 hectolitre batches and around 350,000 litres of beer per year. But they've got a tap room at the brewery which they opened up back in 2018. There's 12 taps there at any one time, and I think it's open fairly regularly actually. I think it's open on the weekends. But as of October 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 35 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and yeah, they seem to be well received in Wales actually. Their can art and things like that does look very nice, so I will need to see at some point about getting a shipment in from Wales with all the different Welsh breweries, so we'll need to figure that out at some stage as well. But yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys after quite some time. I've only had one beer from them so far, and that was an American wheat beer back in about 2016. So yeah, definitely cool to get back to these guys after such a long time, and hopefully we can try a few of their own beers at some point in the future too. So yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Wild Horse Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this beer then. That's everything about both of the breweries involved here. So to tell you a little bit about the beer itself, this one, it is hopped with Sabro, Galaxy, Citra, Mosaic and Amarillo, all American hops. So Sabro, we know, 14% alpha acid, gives you that lovely kind of mandarin-y, orange, coconutty sort of thing. Galaxy, again, 14% alpha acid, very strong passion fruity notes, and a bit of pineapple in there as well usually. Citra, we know very, very well, 14% alpha acid once again, big juicy mango notes with quite a zesty citrusy component as well. Mosaic, 14% alpha acid usually once again, big juicy tangerine notes in there, and then Amarillo is that 12% alpha acid but big oily zesty orangey characteristics. The malt base in this one is lager malt, naked oats and wheat. It uses a verdant yeast, and it also has a bit of dextrose in it, this one as well apparently. So yeah, that is your bill for this beer if you like. But just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up, as you can see, very, very nicely presented. You always get nice artwork on these Fallen Brewing Company beers, and the collaboration artwork of course is a bit different in style from the kind of regular ones that they do. The collaboration stuff is a wee bit more fancy if you like, but the artwork on these beers is done by Zane Capazzi, and we've mentioned this in some of the videos before. But there you can see the Fallen Brewing Company symbol and also the Wild Horse Brewing Company one as well. I think I've been calling it Wild Horse Brewery, so my apologies for that. But there you can see it's got a railway theme because of course the brewery, Fallen Brewing Company, is based in a former railway station. But yeah, beautiful artwork here. It tells you a little bit on the side of the beer. A virtual collab with Wild Horse Brewing. This is a beer with hopping rates elevated beyond anything we've done before. Sabro, Galaxy, Citra, Mosaic and Amarillo combined for a big, juicy, ripe fruit explosion. But yeah, I think this beer cost me about £6 or £6.50, so that's roughly about €8, 80 Swedish kroner, and I guess somewhere in the region of $9 American for the can, just so that those of you watching in different parts of the world have a wee bit of a price reference. But yeah, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. The Super Elevation from Fallen Brewing Company in Kippen, near my hometown of Stirling here in Scotland, in collaboration with Wild Horse Brewing Company from Llandudno in the north of Wales, right in the centre of the North Welsh coast, I should point out, between Anglesey and I guess you could probably say, well, Liverpool in England. Liverpool is pretty much right next to the very northeast of Wales. But yeah, I will say, just looking at this beer pour, this looks as if it's going to be pretty damn good. I think we'll put the rest in when we actually go to drink the thing. Let me just line that up again so it looks nice for the video. But there we go. This looks good. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one then, this beer has poured with a 3/4 head. I would say that's, I don't think it's quite perfect wet. I think it is a little bit creamy. Might just be the light in here though, because I'm filming this one at night time, but to me it looks like a slightly creamy coloured head. Very nice kind of thin foamy bubbles there, but it looks very, very good. You can see the colour of this beer is a lovely pale, I would say this is quite a pale yellow colour actually, this one. I always like comparing these New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But I would compare this one to, you know, like a very pale pineapple juice or something like that. Now remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of the wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA such as this one will undergo a wort boil of about 70 to 90 minutes. But any barrel aging that you do, any adjuncts that you put in are also going to affect it as well. But that's not really a common thing when it comes to this particular style, should we say. But yeah, that explains the colour of it. The level of haze in this one for an 8%er is pretty hazy. This is actually a pretty damn fruity and soupy and gloopy New England Double IPA, I would say. Now remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oat and the wheat content. The yeast is also going to play a role in there as well. But like I said, this is a pretty hefty looking New England Double IPA from that perspective. So yeah, the haze in this one is pretty damn impressive. You can see if I put my fingers behind the glass there, it's just opaque all the way. But yeah, nothing particularly surprising about the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is. So I think we should have a little look at the aroma and see how we go with this one. So let's do it. That does smell pretty nice actually. So straight away I've just noticed something. It says on the can here, this is packaged in April of 21 and best before October of 21, so I'm actually drinking this right at the end of when it's recommended to, so we'll need to bear that in mind with this. But I would say the aroma of this doesn't smell too bad, you know. Well, I'm saying it doesn't smell too bad, it actually smells pretty good I should say. But yeah, that does smell pretty nice actually. So first impression of this beer, this one does have a wee bit of zip to it. I'm going to say that. It's got a nice big juicy fruity thing to it. Absolutely, you get those lovely big juicy tropical and citrusy fruits coming out of it. Smooth but quite light malt base actually, which I'm surprised about when you consider that it's an 8%er, but you get a nice big juicy, I should say a nice kind of big zippy green component out of this as well. But I think this should be quite interesting. As I've said to you before, in my opinion, when it comes to New England IPAs, you tend to get a few different directions that these can go in. They can be farmhousey, and they can be farmhousey and yeasty, rye leaning and grainy, wheaty bitey, oaty creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be quite brown sugary leaning. And quite often they will display a few of these different characteristics. On first impression, this one strikes me that it's going to be a bit more kind of you know, barley malt leaning actually, which is interesting because it has Pilsner malt in it, dextrose, and then it's the rest of it's oat and wheats. So I'm quite surprised at the aroma of this. The malt base comes across as being quite light in this one, I would say. But at the same time, we'll break this down properly for you. But yeah, you get a nice little bit of bread crust in this. You do get some white bread. I actually do get quite a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the very back of the nose, so that's interesting. So yeah, the more that you smell of it, the more that the wheat and the oats start to come into the mix. But before that, it was like a little bit of bread crust, smooth white bread, and that was And that was it. But yeah, there's more and more coming out of this. You can smell the oats kind of thickening up in this one a wee bit, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I do get quite a nice thicker, kind of thicker, very creamy oaty character coming out of this one. And this is one of the things, when New England IPAs get a little bit older, you can smell the difference in the oats. They do have that little bit of almost kind of porridgey kind of smell to them. So you smell that a little bit in this one. But remember, I think usually when you put dextrose in these beers, I think the oat comes out in aroma a little bit more than it would otherwise. But yeah, big kind of creamy oaty character to this one, the wheat at the back of the nose there. I don't get too much in the way of sweetness out of this one, but there is a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butterscotchy type thing coming out of this one, which is quite nice. So, and especially when it's an 8% one, this, you would kind of expect a little bit of that. You would expect it to be a little bit of a beast from that angle, to be honest with you. So yeah, you can smell a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original sweetness, but not too much. Mainly a big oaty kind of creaminess, a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the back, soft white bread underneath, and a little bit of a kind of bread crusty thing. You can definitely get the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose. But yeah, malty side of things is quite nice. I'm curious to see how that translates into the flavour itself. But let's look at the hoppy side of the beer. Yeah, green component is there, but taking a little bit of a back seat. But remember, if this beer's been packaged in April, it's been in the can about 6 months, so not in its optimum, of course. But remember, New England IPAs rely on late edition and dry hopping rather than having a lot of early edition hops, which the West Coast IPAs have in addition to those. So yeah, the green component can sometimes feel a little bit subdued in these beers, but there is a wee touch of earthiness in this one. There is a wee bit of earthiness in there, but you do get quite a nice bit of floral aromaticity, but it's quite wet actually. There is some wet grassiness in there, a wee bit of zest as well. But other than that, the green component does take a bit of a back seat. You do get quite a bit of juicy fruit out of this. You're going to notice the orange straight away in this one, and when you've got Sabro, Mosaic and Amarillo in it, that should make sense. You get this big, oily, zesty, orangey character coming out of this one. You can definitely smell a wee bit of the kind of coconutty note from the Sabro in this as well. Absolutely, you can smell the Sabro right away in this one. I'm not sure what the ratio of hops in this will be, of course, whether it's 20% each, or whether it's something else and they've been added at different times or whatever. But yeah, big zesty orangey notes coming out of it. You can get some of the kind of tropical notes in there as well. You can smell a wee bit of the passion fruit, which is going to be coming from the both the Citra and from the Galaxy in this one. So that's definitely coming out there. There's definitely a kind of smoother mango and a wee bit of a kind of apricot-y type note as well. But yeah, definitely juicy mangoes, bit of stronger passion fruit in there. I do get a wee bit of pineapple the more that I smell of this one as well, which isn't surprising. But yeah, quite a big zesty orange actually with this one. You can smell the coconut, and perhaps there's just a wee bit of a kind of lemony sort of thing mixed in with the grass as well. But the orange for me, yeah, the orange is the most prominent. The kind of mix of orange and tangerine and all this is the biggest mix of is the biggest component of the fruit that's coming out in this one. So yeah, nice aroma, I have to say. But yeah, I think since it's a collaboration review, we've spent quite a lot of time going over other stuff. I think it's about time we tasted the beer there. But as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. Let's put the rest of the beer into the glass. There we go. No sediment really visible in this one either, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, let's have a taste of this though and see how we go. So this one is the Super Elevation, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fallen Brewing Company in Kippen here in central Scotland, and in collaboration with Wild Horse Brewing Company from Llandudno in the north of Wales. So let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, Iechyd da. Here we go. Now, I'm going to say that beer, for being in the can 6 months, it's actually in fairly good nick. Now, you can taste the difference in the oats a little bit. You can feel that the oats have sort of porridged up a little bit, as I like to put it. You can feel that a bit with this beer. But everything else about the beer is pretty bang on. If this was a West Coast IPA, if it was a double West Coast IPA, I think this would still be in, it would be in really like almost very, very good condition, I would say. But when you consider 6 months in the can, that is in good condition. So that shows you it's a good beer. Yeah. And as it is pretty, pretty damn solid actually. So thumbs up to both breweries on this. Let's try and break this down for you a wee bit. So, first impression of this is, it's a smooth, creamy and quite juicy IPA, this one. Or New England, I should say. It's leaning towards that end of the spectrum. But it is pretty damn solid, actually. I've not tried, as I say, I've not tried any of the Wild Horse beers. I need to try, there's one of the newer beers I need to try from Fallen, actually, that's in their core range. That's a hazy. So I need to try that and see how this compares to this one, actually. That compares to this one, I should say. But this is pretty good, actually. As I've said it all along, Fallen are a capable brewery and they do a lot of recipe refinement before they bring out new beers. And this kind of goes to show you that they are capable of experimenting quite well, actually. So, yeah, exciting things to come from them, I'm sure. But yeah, let's break the flavour of this beer down for you properly, as I said. So straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that bread crusty note in there. I do get a wee bit, pardon me, of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing there. So you've got a bit of bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker. That's the backbone of the beer, the middle third and the back third of your palate. Let's focus on the middle third now then. So on top of that, you can get a nice layer of a kind of, the barley malt, the white bready sort of thing. You can feel that just on top of the beer, on top of that backbone. On top of that, you get a nice kind of slightly thicker wheaty layer. You can feel the wheat just thickening out the beer a little bit. Then on top of all of that, down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel the oats. And like I said, the oats have got that almost squidgy, slightly porridgey kind of thing going on. And I think that is just to do with the age of the beer. If the beer had, if we were drinking this beer when it's a month or 2 months old, you'd feel it's a little bit more kind of creamy and you get a bit more sweetness and a bit of dryness out of the oats, I would suspect. But even as it stands, it's pretty damn solid, actually. The wheat and the barley malt in this are holding the beer up quite well, and the dextrose will be contributing to that as well. And I do wonder, maybe the dextrose is what's helping the beer hold itself together quite so well. So yeah, dextrose is basically just a kind of sugar, if you like, actually, and a sugar adjunct that they put into the beer to affect the malt base a little bit, because effectively in your fermentation process you're just converting sugar into alcohol, breaking the molecule up and putting it into sugars, or putting it into alcohols rather. That's what the yeast is doing. But yeah, it's the malt base in this is pretty solid. The thing that surprised me about it though, for a big 8%er, there's not too much in the way of sweetness out of this. The further you go into the aftertaste, you get a little bit of the breadiness in there, you get the bread crust coming out a wee bit more, and you do get a wee bit of dryness out of the oats right enough. But like I say, the oats go right down that kind of middle trough of your tongue. And as you move further out towards the edge of your tongue, it does give you a wee bit of dryness, for sure. In the dead centre of your palate, maybe you get a little touch of that kind of Werther's Original brown sugary sort of thing, but yeah, this beer, it actually covers its alcohol very, very well. You do get just a little hint of booziness in that dead centre of your palate, but otherwise it's it covers it very well. I can imagine in its prime this beer would have been something pretty good, and it did have quite high ratings. I think it was like 4.1 or something it had on Untappd when I had a little look for the hops and things earlier. So yeah, this was a beer that's rated, well, it is a beer that's rated quite highly, so maybe they'll do a rebrew, you never know. But other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the middle third of your palate on this one. So let's do the back third of the palate. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. You can feel a wee bit of that kind of bread crusty sort of thing. So yeah, definitely get that nice little bit of bread crusty build up. You can feel that for sure. Then going from the base layer of that back third of your palate, bread crust again. You can feel a bit of the more grainy bread crust at the back there. You can feel white bready character for sure. Then you get the nice wheatiness, and you get quite a bit of bitiness off the wheat in that back third of your palate as well. Then on top of that, you get the yeasty note. And the yeasty character in this one's quite interesting because it is a little bit farmhousey and sort of like an airy, bready sort of thing, an airy, flowery bread. And it's a verdant yeast as well. So that's an interesting point. There's quite a few breweries using these verdant yeasts now. But yeah, definitely on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. So as you come further forward, you can feel the flavour is just condensing down a wee bit. And as you go into that middle third of your palate, the flavour just squashes together a little bit. And that is pretty much your yeasty and malty component of this beer. So quite a bready, I would say overall at this point in time, it's quite a bready, wheaty and oaty leaning New England IPA. This one, it's actually quite an old school New England IPA, if you can put it like that. It reminds me of the ones that I was drinking from the likes of Stigbergets and stuff like that back in 2015, 2016. It's like that rather than being sweeter, as a number of them are today. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, there is a wee bit of earthiness there for sure, and I think it's Mosaic that's most likely to give you that. As you move further forward, the earthiness spreads forward a wee bit, then you get a nice big floral aromatic sort of thing as you reach the kind of front corners of your palate, and I think that goes together really quite nice. It's a nice big deep floral aromatic thing coming out of this beer. Round the front curve of your palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So I like how that goes together as well, but the grassiness does have a wee bit of zest to it as well, and I think the citra is going to be contributing to that most. It's not an overly bitter beer, this one, it's not overly dank, but yeah, the floral aromaticity is quite deep, and the grassiness has a wee bit of aromaticity and zestiness to it as well. So green component is still holding up pretty well in this one when you consider the age of the beer, so that's a point to note. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things. So, border region between front third and middle third of your palate in this beer, there's a nice wee bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing, for sure. You do get a little bit of that, but the base of that front third of your palate, I actually find it quite bread crusty. Maybe there's a wee bit of white bread there, but quite bread crusty actually. And it's on top of all of that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a nice, quite strong passion fruity note out of this one. So that's the citra and the galaxy that are going to give you that. It might even be, I actually would go as far as saying there's a bit of grapefruit in there. It has got a bit of that really pungent grapefruit, but as you move further forward from it, it develops to be a more mellow passion fruit, and then as you move further forward from that, you start to get the slightly juicier mango notes there. So you can really feel the the galaxy and the citra coming out of this one. I think I actually told you a little bit of a lie earlier. I might have said the Galaxy was an American hop, but no, it's Australian. So I think I told you all the hops in this one are American. No, Galaxy is Australian. Bad Jim. So yeah, all the other hops are American though, definitely. So 4 Americans, 1 Australian. But yeah, you do get that nice passion fruity sort of thing out of this one. As you go further forward, it develops a bit more mango-y. There's 1 or 2 wee hints of like apricot and stuff underneath, but nothing noteworthy. And then you get a wee bit of pineapple going further into the aftertaste. But yeah, grapefruit, passion fruit, a little bit of mango, a little bit of pineapple, but yeah, passion fruit takes the lead there. When you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the orange. So you can feel the big oily, zesty Amarillo, I think, takes the lead. You get a little bit of the coconut from the Sabro in there as well, but the oily, zesty Amarillo, I think, is the one that's the anchor of the Sabro and the Mosaic. So you do get a bit of that lighter tangerine on the top, but I think it's the more oily character of the Amarillo that's taking the lead when it comes to the fruity side of this beer, for sure. So yeah, it's orangey, it's grapefruity, passion fruity, and a bit mangoey. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. I do like how this goes together, but right on the tip of the tongue, you do maybe get a little hint of a kind of limey, lemony sort of thing, and that's most likely from the citra, for sure. But I think that's a pretty nice New England Double IPA. It's a shame that I didn't get this one a little bit earlier, actually, to see what it was all about. But yeah, I think that's pretty good, so it gets a thumbs up from me for sure. So well done to both Wild Horse and Fallen for this one. But let's round off the review with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, it's actually, I'd say that it's kind of top end of mid-bodied, but it's actually very slick and drinkable for what it is. And I do wonder if that's the Scottish water. I mean, I always say this in some of the Scottish beers, you always get this lovely clean mouthfeel from Scottish beers. We're very proud of our tap water here. So this beer, it does feel really nice and smooth and slick, but at the same time you get a bit of that Scottish cleanliness out of it. But yeah, it's a nice easy drinking one. That drinks like some of the New England pale ales and session IPAs and stuff like that you get, which is a bit dangerous when you consider it's 8%. So bear that in mind when you go with this one. And the more that I drink of it as well, the more kind of bitey and zippy it gets. But yeah, IBUs, I think this one's got maybe a bit more to it. But remember, again, this is at the age, so you start to get more of the kind of, the more that I drink this as well. I said earlier there wasn't too much dankness to this beer, but you do get a fair wee bit of that in this one. So yeah, I think this beer's maybe got about 50 IBUs. 40 at least, but I think potentially 50. So yeah, about 40 or 50 IBUs. The malt base, like I said, is very, very smooth. It's got a bit of bite and zip to it. The wheat is quite prominent for sure. Not much in the way of sweetness, this one. It's like an old school 2016 era Swedish New England IPA. Swedish West Coast IPA as they sometimes call it. But then the fruity, juicy side of things is quite well balanced. Good bit of tropical, quite a pungent tropical note, I would say, and a nice big kind of oily orange to balance it out. So this is a really solid beer. Like I say, a bit disappointed I didn't get it when it's a bit younger and maybe more in its prime, but I think it has held up pretty solidly for sure. But it comes across as very slick and drinkable, which is dangerous for an 8%er. But yeah, this has been a nice one to review. Always nice to review new stuff from Fallen, of course. I like supporting my local breweries. But yeah, this is good stuff. And nice to encounter Wild Horse again. So hopefully I can get one or two of their beers and review them for you at some point. Because we don't get too much in the way of Welsh beer up here, unfortunately. So yeah, let's see. But yeah, this one was the Super Elevation, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fallen Brewing Company in Kippen near Stirling here in central Scotland, and in collaboration with Wild Horse Brewing Company from Llandudno in the north of Wales. Let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both Fallen and Wild Horse, and hopefully we can get a few more Wild Horse things, and I'm sure we'll do more Fallen as well. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, see you very soon.